Now bringing in our injury expert, Marty Jaramillo. And Marty, we see that ankle injury certainly does not look pretty from Pacheco. Those ankle injuries can certainly be very, very tough. This seems to be worse than a sprain, though. How do you view it from your eyes?
You know, Zach, you watch the replay over and over again, and he was predisposed to any number of injuries, including ankle sprain, fracture, high ankle sprain. So he'll be going through a number of tests to determine the specificity of the injury, but also the extent of which he will be dealing with. So right now it's being reported, story's fluid, as an ankle sprain. It could be an ankle sprain, traditional ankle sprain, where the ankle gets rolled over. You see how his leg got rolled up under that pile. He also is predisposed to a fracture, possibly a fibular fracture, which is the bone on the outside, and it also could be any combination. I expect him to go on the IR. Best case scenario with a traditional ankle sprain, about 4 weeks, but it can be up to 8 weeks with a fibular fracture, very similar to Mark Andrews last year, who was out 9 weeks.
Yeah, Pacheco up to that point was looking very good for the Chiefs and had been so key to the offense, trying to maybe find its footing under Patrick Mahomes and company. But of course, that's not the only injury that we are monitoring around the NFL. You look over in Minnesota with Justin Jefferson going down with potentially a quad contusion. You ask Jefferson how he feels. He says he'll be good to go and won't miss any time come week 3. But you see a quad contusion, you hear about that. That can be maybe tricky to work back from, right?
Very great question. Listen, Justin Jefferson tells it how it is. And he felt really good, and I love to see that from an athlete of his caliber. However, Justin, the real test is today and tomorrow when the pain, the stiffness, the inflammation, when that all sets in. So yes, they have to be quite conservative with this quad contusion, also a very deep bruise of the thigh. Why? Because that contusion can fill up with blood, causing something called a hematoma, which is a very large sac of fluid. If that happens, then the quad or the thigh simply stops to fire and loses some of its strength, and that would cause them to be out. So the medical staff will be working feverishly to minimize that blood and that swelling in the thigh and get him ready for Saturday. I suspect he plays. I have a 75-25 that he plays next week.
So Justin Jefferson, maybe for fantasy owners, they can pencil him in to start this week. But for those fantasy owners who have Christian McCaffrey, we know he will not be playing this weekend as he's on the IR. That ankle and Achilles injury, calf injury, it seems like we've seen kind of around sports that calf injury leading to Achilles problems. I think of Kevin Durant, and now you see the 49ers and their star dealing with it. How do you go about maybe making sure a player gets enough rest? Because the last thing you want to do is deal with a torn Achilles.
Well, Zach, you brought up Kevin Durant, and you were right on point there. So how do you protect a player that plays the most unprotected position in the NFL? And then you add a history of injuries. Well, this is what happens. You have to put them on the injury reserve. So what happened earlier this season is Christian aggravated a calf tear that he had and sustained in the last game of last season. And he re-aggravated that. They shut him down. What happens when you shut down the calf and you add immobilization and try to really rest that calf, then what happens? The Achilles gets very tight. And the Achilles is very, very elastic. But when it gets thick and it gets tight, it gets extremely painful, and you lose that elastic quality. And that's where we are now. And you are 100% correct. If you have a history of calf tears, you are predisposed to an Achilles tear. Yes, you said Kevin Durant. Guess who else? Aaron Rodgers was nursing a calf injury earlier that year, ended up in Achilles. So this is the right move. You have to be conservative with this type of injury and with your franchise type player. And listen, despite all the positive well wishes and prayers everywhere from fantasy managers, he had to get on that IR.
Marty, let's say you were employed by the 49ers right now and you're working on Christian McCaffrey. I want to know, what will be your method of maybe getting him back healthy? What would you do and say to McCaffrey?
Well, as a medical professional, you know the personality, the mindset of the athlete you're working with. And in this particular case, I'm very comfortable in saying you have to protect Christian from himself. And the rest is a very, very positive step in that direction. He'll be undergoing an aggressive amounts of manual therapy, getting in there, breaking down scar tissue, many other modalities, including shockwave therapy that maximizes blood flow and breaks down scar tissue, aggressive amounts of stretching. And when he's pain-free enough, he'll be undergoing eccentric type strengthening. What is eccentric? Well, it's the landing, the push off, because these tears happen with the drop back to the push off, right? The drop back to push off, exactly how Aaron Rodgers. So as he backpedals and then accelerates, that's what they have to work on that lengthening contraction. That's called a negative or eccentric contraction. They'll be doing everything possible to get him ready sooner than later. But conservative move is the right play here.
Yeah, McCaffrey, the highest paid running back in the league. The 49ers certainly want him out there given his injury standpoints in the past. Probably will take it a lot easier than trying to rush him back. Let's switch gears and talk a little bit of college football with Quinn Ewers and his Texas Longhorns, which are now ranked #1 in the country. But Ewers dealing with an oblique strain that he suffered over the weekend, listed as week to week. That oblique, from a QB standpoint, how do you maybe deal with that?
Well, Quinn suffered a very, very painful injury. I think we basically underplay how important the core, the abdominal wall is with such an aggressive throw like throwing a football. And that core, which includes not only the abdominal wall, but also the obliques, and these muscles attach in multiple areas of the rib cage. So even taking a deep breath can cause a significant amount of pain. It will be week to week because these injuries have a way of really healing very quickly. The typically small tears, they can get a little bit larger because the healthy muscle around it goes into spasm to protect it, but it actually heals quite well. So the week-to-week designation is smart here. But what a quarterback room they have in Texas, boy. He's just next man up for sure. But I will say, though, this week I suspect he doesn't play because they're playing a weaker opponent in Louisiana Monroe.
Yeah, having Arch Manning ready to step in after what we saw him do last weekend probably makes life a whole lot easier for Steve Sarkisian and company. Life maybe not as easy as we switch gears and talk a little bit of baseball with Francisco Lindor, who has been so good for the Mets this year, dealing with a lower back injury. He's slated to have an MRI after he left the game the other night with that injury to a lower back. You hear lower back and you hear baseball. Where do you go with that?
Well, these are my Mets, and this is an important injury for me personally, but I will tell you, he's been battling this pain for about 6 to 8 weeks, really battling through. He's such a warrior. To see his name next to Shohei Ohtani for the MVP races, an amazing feat with having so many, downtime he had last year, and his performances wasn't up to par. So not only is the back injury so the caution, you have to be so cautious with it in baseball. It's also his position. He's always in that crouched position, bending forward, ready to move forward. It puts a lot of load on that low back. Then you add the violent swing, and the pain, the tightness continues almost like a vicious cycle. It's like a pain spasm cycle. Now, he'll be undergoing the MRI to really laser in on specifically what is the error. Is it strictly just muscle spasm that's compressing the nerve? Or is it a herniated disc, a little bit more serious, where the disc between the vertebrae can tear slightly and put pressure on the nerve? The good thing is there are many non-invasive treatments, including medications, that can help them decrease the spasm, loosen them up, and especially decrease pain. It will be a week-to-week, not game-to-game, because these games sometimes are oftentimes back-to-back. But the fingers crossed for him. The medical staff will be working feverishly to get him ready sooner than later. They don't have much time left.
Yeah, your Mets have to worry about my Braves because I'm telling you, we want not just #3 in the wild card, but we're coming for the top. So look out there, NL. Marty Jaramillo.
We're knocking, baby. We're knocking, Jack.
I'm telling you, the Braves are knocking harder. We'll get back on top before it's all said and done. I'm booking that here right now. That was Marty Jaramillo as we take a look at the notable games today, and you see the first two, Nationals and Mets. Dodgers and Braves at 7:20. Max Fried on the bump as we tried to get the series win. Took the first two before the Dodgers won yesterday's game. So that game of big intrigue. Phillies and Brewers. Brewers trying to hold on and stay above water. Same thing for the Padres, who are trying to keep pace in that NL race as well for the wild card.